Hey, what's going on, everybody? Mike and Jamie back with episode number 64 of Mirrorless Minutes. And we have a guest on that we've been trying to get on for so long, but you know how it is. Everybody's got crazy schedules. And I almost titled this episode Welcome Babraham Lincoln, because there's this little inside joke between Mike, Ann, and myself, because Mike and I always joke about our show being like the Wayne's World of a photography podcast. Yeah, and one time Ann jumped in and said, I want to come on and I can be Abraham Lincoln. We're like, yes, that is so perfect. So perfect. So, but I figured I would be a little more respectful for that and not do the.
That's okay. I want to be Abraham Lincoln. My Abraham Lincoln days are finished, so I might as well pretend.
Yeah, that's good.
So here we are. We have with us tonight Ann Day. If you don't know who Ann Day is or know her body of work, she's easy to find on Google. I'll tell you what. She's got a very storied history in the world of photography, and she also is a fellow member of the Olympus Visionary program. She's one of the visionaries, and she's been involved with Olympus for quite a while. And I love Ann's work. It's hard to explain other than to say she, I think, embodies, just the beautiful in everyday life, which is not really the easiest thing to do. I think everybody tries to do that and doesn't often succeed, but Ann does that with no problem at all. So welcome to the show, Ann. How are you doing tonight?
I'm so excited. Finally, I get to be on Mirrorless Minutes.
You are. And alone, so the whole show for you.
I know,
exactly.
This is amazing.
I think everybody else in the program, when I say program, I mean the Visionary program. I think everybody else, when we've had them on, generally it's as a group. So
right,
we've dedicated the show to Abraham Lincoln, and that's just how it's going to be tonight. So, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, jump in there.
Well, I was just going to tell you, Ann. So I'm looking at the photo behind you, and I know we talked for barely a minute before we started, and I don't know. I want to ask you stuff about your past, but I want to hear more about the photo behind you.
Well, when I saw you guys had your Olympus posters behind you, right. I got my Olympus poster, and this was from, I think, 2005 when we used to do shows in Vegas. We did back in the, I feel like anything I talk about, I can talk about photography back in the days of horse and buggies, but even 2005 feels like horse and buggies. It was when we had the first DSLR was the E1, and the picture behind me is a picture I took of a cow in a body of water, like a pond. It was a really hot summer day. Let me see if I can move it closer. So
that's good right there. Actually,
it's on my website.
Yeah,
but it's kind of a nice picture, and Olympus made a poster of it, and I felt really proud that they made about 1,000 posters, and people were lined up to have me sign it.
Yeah.
So
wow,
I was so proud. I was signing it with my Sharpie, and people were shaking my hands, and there were just literally more than 100 people at a time were waiting for me to sign the poster. So finally, at the end of the line, this woman has been waiting patiently, and I was signing her poster, and she said, "Did you take that picture?"
No, you're just signing them.
I said, no, somebody else took it. I'm just signing it.
Did you say it was the early days of the Chick-fil-A ads? Yeah.
Oh, I don't
with
remember.
The cows.
No, have you seen those ads? But the next person who stood in line said, "How did you get the cow in the water?"
Yeah.
Like somehow, because digital photography was becoming a thing and Photoshop was becoming a thing, obviously I must have faked the cow in the water.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my hero story.
That's fantastic.
PMA.
So that's good though. And so 2005, was that the first year you were with?
No,
the Olympus program?
I started with Olympus in 2002 when we did One Day in the Life of Africa, which was the first digital book ever done.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
literally, it
I
was
do
the
remember.
first coffee table book that was ever done using digital photography, and Olympus was a sponsor. And we had 100 of the world's greatest photojournalists and me. The 99 of the world's greatest photojournalists and then me. And I promise you, really famous photojournalists that you've heard of, whose names I won't drop, had never used digital cameras before.
Oh, really?
I had never used a digital camera. So I brought my Nikons on one arm, and then I had the Olympus on the other arm, because I was so sure that without putting a roll of film into a camera, there couldn't be a real image. And by the end of the trip, we had to download using, there was no such thing as card readers. There was just these boxes you put the card into, and I forget what it was called, but it was really complicated and boring to anybody who's watching this, because it was such a blip in the, timeline of digital photography. But what I was going to say
really,
is that then we had a big launch party for the book, and the person who was in charge of the Visionary program, John Nauer, asked me if I would like to join the program. And I said, yes, I would, but I just bought a Nikon camera today. And he said, don't worry, you can keep it. But I didn't keep it. I returned it to B&H or wherever I bought it. And then there was that D20. I don't know if you guys remember, but it didn't even have interchangeable lenses.
Yep.
And you had to, for wide angle, you had to put a screw attachment, and
a screw on the front.
And even then, even though the technology was pretty crude, the glass that Olympus used, I don't want to sound like an ad, but the glass was just beautiful.
It always has been, I think.
It really, that's the thing that, I mean, I remember I did a test once with a Canon, and I guess I'm not dissing Canon. Everybody knows they're great cameras, but I did a test on an autumn day with a bright blue sky, orange leaves, and I took a picture at the exact same time using two cameras. One was, I don't know, the E1, and it was like a Canon 20D or something. And I looked at the two files on my computer, and the Olympus was like Kodachrome, and the Canon was like Ektachrome.
Yep.
And I was always a Kodachrome shooter, so it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
the vibrance.
Kodachrome to me just has this kind of permanence and saturation that feels more like the way I see the world.
Right.
You know, those cameras too, and that's something that I miss. You know, when I first started shooting, I don't have a film background. My first camera was an Olympus E500 DSLR. So
I remember those, yeah.
But that was when the E1, the E500, and I think the E3, those are cameras that I had experience with. Those all had a Kodak sensor, and I can remember. I go back and I still look at my Lightroom catalog and look at photos taken with those, and there's a difference.
They had a Kodak sensor?
That's correct. Yeah, and
I did not know that.
The colors were rich, and they just had this look, and they're not the same. I mean, there's definitely a difference from the photos that I took back then, as far as the way the colors are represented.
Oh, maybe you must be right. If you look on my website, and I have all those summer lawns pictures, that's one of the sections. That was a project I did for a guy called Dirk Halstead, who was a Time magazine photographer, and he started something called The Digital Journalist. And they were running a lot of really grim pictures of Iraq and war and famine and all kinds of terrible things. And he saw my pictures at, I was presenting at one of the PMA shows, and he said he wanted to do something lighter, something happier. And he put together a portfolio of 50 images of it, which he called The Hissing of Summer Lawns, from a Joni Mitchell song.
Oh, yeah.
From that, on my website, I call it Summer Lawns, and there's a lot of pictures of kids playing, and it's sort of mysterious. It's not all just, fluffy stuff. There's something a little bit dark about it, but it certainly was more cheerful than war.
And I'll put a link to in the show notes so people can go see that after the show.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I'm going to say it about 15 times. Follow me on Instagram, Day13. Day13.
Anne is taken off on Instagram.
Yeah,
she loves it.
I do.
I'll make sure, Anne, that there are links to everything for you in the show notes, so that after the show, it's easy for people to find where you're at everywhere online. So it's one of the things we make sure to do.
But I'm sorry, I'm digressing. The reason I brought that up about summer lawns, Jamie, is because a lot of those images were shot with the old Olympus digital.
Yeah.
And they really remind me of Kodachrome.
There's something there. I think there really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so, reading, researching, I don't know why I should even say this. It sounds corny to say that, researching your background, but because we've talked enough. But, you've done a lot with architectural photography, which it's so interesting to me that you do that, because I think a lot of people initially probably know you for people in your photos, I think, anyways. And
more photojournalism.
Yes.
Right.
But
it was that was a thing that I started doing about 30 years ago, because I was new in New York and I was trying to make a living, and somebody hired me to do a book about the Library of Congress, the architecture of the Library of Congress in Washington. And I took a class at the School of Visual Arts with a Hungarian architectural photographer called George Zerna, and he was working only with 8x10 and 4x5 film. Wow. So I learned a lot from him, and then I became his third assistant. I wasn't good enough to be his first assistant, and he didn't pay me, but he allowed me to come on shoots with him. Anyway, to make a long story short, I kind of got taught how to shoot architecture, and then the same publisher kept using me. So it wasn't like it was the only thing that I did. I couldn't have stayed alive if I was relying on those kinds of jobs. But for some reason, that relationship with that editor and that publisher and everything, I've done, I think, eight books on classical American architecture.
Wow.
Yeah,
I just won a really, really big award for it.
Just what year?
Well, in May, I got an award for my work
you told us.
doing architecture, classical architecture. But it is it's not that it's a sideline. It's not the thing that moves me the way that photographing people and journalism moved me. It's something that interests me, but maybe it's not the only thing that I ever want to do.
So what is it about the architecture then? Is it because architecture to me seems like
symmetry. I love symmetry, and classical architecture especially has real symmetry and proportion. And I'm a kind of there's not that much modern architecture that I like.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was the case.
There are some things that I love. I just went yesterday to that new PATH train in New York, the Oculus.
Yep.
And I made some time-lapse videos, which I am not going to show you right now because I have to put them together. But that's quite beautiful. It's really an extraordinary space to be in.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It really is. I mean, we spent time there just this last, November when we were all together.
Yep. Oh, I didn't go in November. I never went to the Oculus.
Yeah,
I missed that trip.
I think the first day though, it was before we all met, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you guys do any video in there?
No.
Because I couldn't get a tripod permit on the day.
Right.
You have to go online to try to get one. So I had a little tiny, one of those 6-inch tripods, and I put it on the floor and pressed the lens up against the glass. I was up high at the top looking down, and it's not bad. I mean, it would have been better without the glass.
Right.
So here's a question. I'm stuck on the architecture thing with you for some reason tonight. So between New York City and Washington, D.C., because those are two cities that I can speak about because I've been to them both. Architecturally, is there one that you have more interest in than the other when it comes to to the buildings there for classical architecture?
Washington has a lot more classical stuff that's still standing. We in our unbelievable stupidity of the 1960s ripped down Penn Station in New York and replaced it with, I think, the ugliest building to ever be put in New York City, which is Madison Square Garden. And they're talking about getting rid of Madison Square and using the old post office, which is a good idea. But in the meantime, we ripped down one of the great buildings of America. But I would say New York has more fun stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of the new buildings that went up in Washington are really pretty awful, like the FBI and the police and
they're bland.
It's stark, very stark architecture.
They're not that well done. Whereas in New York, a lot of the new buildings are more fun. I like One World Trade Center when you're at it. I don't love it from a distance.
Yeah.
But, I just love the Chrysler Building. I love the Empire State Building. I love all those skyscrapers from the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah.
Even though they're not classical, they're so beautiful.
And I just got back from Chicago today, and I had probably about 3 hours to walk around on my own and shoot. And you're right. The tall glass and steel is kind of cool for a minute, when the sun's hitting it the right way, but I still find myself drawn to the buildings that I know took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to put together.
It's like the Wrigley
One
building.
of the best buildings I've ever photographed is in Chicago, because there's a muralist that I did a book about, and he has murals and buildings all over. There's one in Detroit at the Detroit Free Library. There's one in Chicago, and I'm pretty sure it's the Mason.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The Masons'
not
headquarters.
In the Wrigley,
Would that be there?
It could be. I have to check. Who's the muralist? Not
the muralist is called Edwin Blashfield, and he did the mural in the Library of Congress. Anyway, I'm trying to remember. In a minute, I'll think of which building, what it's called. But it's so beautiful. It's right in downtown Chicago.
Okay.
All marble.
I guess I'm gonna have to do some research now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought it up because I don't know the name of the building.
No, that's the whole thing.
But Jamie, the answer is I think New York is a lot more fun than Washington architecturally.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I think so.
And also, I love the light in New York, the way it kind of comes down this avenues and especially like yesterday. It was a bright, bright, sunny day, and there was this really hard light hitting the sides of buildings, and you don't get that drama in any other city in the world. There's no other city
it's the
like
Elks National Veterans Memorial.
That's it. It's the Elks. That's right.
That's
good
right.
For you.
Yeah. Well, that's you can good for Wikipedia.
Good for you. The Elks. That's right. It's
because I'm looking
go there
at it right
in Chicago.
now.
It's so beautiful, and it's open to the public.
Right. Yeah, I'm checking it out right now. Yeah, there it is. It's sharp.
So do you want to change gears for a minute and talk about some of your photojournalistic past? Like I'm really intrigued about photographing inaugurations, presidential inaugurations. That's kind of a massive thing.
I want to go down that road too, and I'm going to throw you. You got Jamie wanting you to do it. I'm going to throw you a question though, because like you and I have talked in the past, and I've talked a lot with Larry and Jay. My life was headed right where yours went. I went to college for journalism, and I look at all of you and I said, man, I want to do that. And you said one thing to me, you go, thank God you didn't. That's all you said.
Well, the main reason I wish I could have made a living. I mean, I think Larry is still making a living doing that. But it was really, really hard to try to make a living doing that unless you had a staff job, and all those staff jobs are gone now anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend here who just retired from the New York Times after 30 years, and they bought everybody out. I think there's only like a handful of staff photographers. And, you know, for me, I've almost never made any money doing these kinds of stories. So that's why I did it. When I lived in New York, I did a lot of parties and grip and grin kind of stuff. Even, you know, I did a lot of events with like the mayor of New York and stuff like that. But you know, to try to make a living doing photojournalism for me was hard. And I wasn't as, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't as brave as the men that I knew.
Well,
because,
first Larry
like,
was, yeah, I know.
I remember being in Haiti, and I was working with a guy from the Associated Press, and there was a man who was being stoned to death. And so my friend, the other photographer, ran out in front of the crowd, so he was behind them. So he was getting the stones coming towards him, because that obviously was the best shot.
Right.
So what did I do? I ran into a police station and hid.
But you got architecture pictures.
No, but I got a great picture. I got a great picture from Haiti. I got the you know, Duvalier and his wife driving onto the U.S. cargo plane.
Oh, wow.
Jeez. It went all around the world. It was I got one great picture. I wasn't going to get a picture where there was stones coming towards me. Sorry. Yeah. I'm not
maybe
that
you were
kind
just
of
smarter. Maybe it's not, maybe you weren't, like you said, as scared. Maybe you were just smarter.
A lot of guys I know have that adrenaline that when they see danger, they go right for it. Right. And when I see danger, I go the other way.
That's what intrigued me actually to get into it. That's what I always said I wanted to do.
Oh, because you like danger.
Oh yeah, I would love to have been in stuff. In fact, I would have even minded joining the armed forces and being a photographer there.
Well, see, that could be. I could see that could be really interesting, also.
Yeah,
you have your team with you.
Right, and exactly. Yeah,
you're not on your own. But
for sure.
So yeah, the presidential inaugurations was not dangerous.
No, not until this last.
I didn't do the last one. I don't think they did a book. The way I got into that is a friend of mine, David Kennerly, who's photographed every president since Nixon. He was the editor of the book, and he hired 15 photographers to cover different aspects of the first Bush inauguration. I mean, I had done the Reagan inauguration for a private client back whenever that was, 80. Was that 84?
1980.
80 was the first
one, yeah. 80.
That was the one I did, 80. And then when I was in college, I went and photographed Jimmy Carter's inauguration. And it was funny because there was just no security. You could just wander up on Capitol Hill and watch him get sworn in.
Jeez.
And then with Bush, the first inauguration, there wasn't that much security. I walked up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. I had really good security. I mean, good, not, you know, what's a clearance, security clearance.
Clearance. You had solid clearance, right?
And then the second one, which was after 9/11, it was very hard to move around and there were very few people at that inauguration because the weather was bad and it was hard to get in. And then the Obama was just crazy. That was like, I've never seen so many human beings in my life.
Wow.
Were you there for that?
Yes, I was there for that. And, you know, it's not just one day. It's 4 days of events. Was a big concert with Beyonce and Bruce Springsteen and Aretha and everybody. And I brought my son, who was in 8th grade at the time, and he didn't have any security clearance. So a friend of mine took him. And there I was in my good, fabulous location. And who should walk by but my kid? He managed to get to right where I was.
Wow.
But then the second Obama was also really crowded. I did that one too. So I did 4 recently.
Wow.
All for the same publisher.
Now, when you shoot something like that, I'm assuming you're turning in everything that you've shot. Are you able to hold any of the images that you've shot, like, in your own possession? I mean,
but the deal that we made, all of us, was that we own all the images. I own all those pictures, but I wasn't allowed to release any of them until the book was published.
Yep. Oh, that's an incredibly awesome arrangement. Then I don't think you could ask for really a better contract than that.
Well, maybe a little more money.
more money.
Well, yeah, that's always a good thing. I'm not going to knock that one.
But, you know, when you get to do these historical things, you kind of think, you know, I would almost pay to.
Right. Yeah.
It's like being in the front seat of history, really.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And I went to the Democratic Convention this year in Philadelphia, and that was another amazing historical event.
Yeah, I was going to say, how was it? Because Jamie and I were there the week before doing our workshop.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in Philly doing a workshop the week before, and
It was really, 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 really hot.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't weird.
That's what I can tell you.
It was
extremely hot, and I didn't feel that well. And then about a week later, I found out that I had appendicitis.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
So you were working through appendicitis.
I was working with appendicitis.
Man.
Oh, the other
what did you
thing
cover in that one? Like, what did
I was down on the floor.
Book,
I was right on the floor, and I was just doing it for a local newspaper in Washington.
Oh, okay.
But as I said, I probably would have gone, you know, for free.
Right.
But I ended up, you know, you're in this pack, and there are literally hundreds of photographers, and you get like 1 minute to go run up and photograph the stage, and then you run, and everybody is very respectful of each other because there's only room for 5 or 6 photographers under the stage, and then you run back and you wait, and then you go run back again, and you get very close to the speakers and to the stage and everything. So I had all my Olympus gear, and I was really sweaty and hot and all this gear, and I kept banging into this young woman who was standing next to me, and she was beautiful and looked all fresh and clean, and she had a tiny camera the size of a golf ball on a stick. And I looked over and I thought, boy, that's the way to do this.
and you thought the Olympus was light, right?
Right. And I said, well, is that a 360? And she told me whatever, I thought it was a GoPro, whatever it was, she told me what it was. And I asked her who she was photographing for. And she said the name of the site, which is called Refinery 29. I said, oh my God, my daughter works there. And she said, who's your daughter? And I told her my daughter's name. And she said, oh my God, she's my best friend at work. Wow. So it was there with 20,000 people. She was the only person I spoke to the whole night. And so, of course, what did she do? She took her cell phone out and did a selfie of the two of us, texted my daughter and said, we're BFFs.
Yeah, that's awesome. Man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, you're lucky with the coincidences running into people in humongous events, you know, like your son passing you by, and then
I know, and I ran into my daughter at the Women's March in Washington just a few weeks ago. But we were trying to find each other.
Yeah, but even that you could accomplish that's quite a feat, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what was amazing is I was right in front of the stage with like Alicia Keys and all these amazing performers. I didn't even know there were going to be performers, and so my daughter texted me. She said, I'm near the stage. And I said, oh, I'm right in front of the stage. And she said, I can't see you. And I said, well, and I had a bright green scarf, and I was not wearing one of those pink hats. Sorry, but not my style.
Yeah.
And so I took this bright green scarf and I wrapped it around my head. And she texted, she said, oh, I'm like 10 feet away from you.
Oh, jeez. Cool.
It sounds like a wild, Who concert or something from the 70s.
It was unbelievable.
So how about, is there any chance that we could kind of circle back around to where this all started? We talked about, that you've done a lot of architecture work for years. And I know previous to going on the air here, we discussed a project that you've been working on, some things you've been working on that involve architecture, and thought maybe you could do a screen share and kind of talk about what you've got going on.
Yeah. I've been working on this thing about the tops of New York City buildings, and here's just a little lesson which people who don't shoot architecture might not know. Whenever you're looking up at a building, the lines are going to converge. Everybody knows that, right? So you get like a V. But what you really want, if you're me, is you want the lines to be parallel. And there are two ways to accomplish that. One, if you're far enough away using a long lens, you can often get the top of the building parallel. But if you can't get enough distance and you have to point up at the building, your lines are going to be like this. But we have in the Olympus, and I'm using the EM1 Mark II, which has a really good keystone compensation. It has vertical and horizontal. So I'm going to show some pictures. I better do a screen share now. And again, these are just preliminary shots, but I just wanted to show what that keystone comp can do. And sometimes even after using keystone comp, everybody, all of you who are listening, you still might have to tweak it a little bit in Photoshop.
Yeah, and you know, it's something that's not, we don't talk about it much, you know, Jamie.
No, we don't at all. I don't think I ever have.
I'll be interested. Actually, I'm looking forward to reading what you put out, Anne.
Yeah. So for people who don't know what Anne's talking about, built right into the camera is the ability to correct that distortion. Lots of times if you're shooting a building, and like Anne says, if you're up closer to it, the building almost looks like it's falling away from you, or just the angles don't look correct. You know, you don't have the parallel lines from one side of the building to the other. They they tilt, and the Olympus cameras have the ability to actually correct that right in the camera when you take the photo. And that's kind of what Anne's been doing, is showcasing what that can do.
Right. And it's a very cool feature. The only use that I can see for it is for architecture, that you wouldn't use it for anything else. And the other thing to remember when you're using that, it's in one of the camera menus, and I was just about to, I think it's in camera menu 1. I'll look on my camera back and see, or maybe Mike, do you know where it is exactly? I think it's in camera
with me.
Okay, I'll look and see.
It's without taking everything off. I'll have to.
Okay, let me just look in the menu.
Jamie, you got yours right there?
Yeah, I've got one here. I'll look it up while you're.
Oh wait, I have it. It's in camera menu 2, shooting menu 2. So over on the left, you have the 2 cameras, camera 1, camera 2, and then you go down forward. It says Keystone Comp, off or on. That's all. There are not a lot of other choices. But the thing to remember is when you're using it, you have to do all of your exposure and shutter speed first, because once you're in Keystone Comp, those 2 dials that are shutter speed and aperture are now assigned to tilting this way or horizontal or vertical. So you can't make any exposure changes once you're in that.
Yep.
Okay, so here, let me get the screen share up. And forgive me, everybody, because this is the first time I've done this. Okay, so here's what a picture looks like normally. And is this arrow showing you guys?
Yep.
Okay, so you see how these lines go up? They're not parallel. I like my lines to be parallel with the side of the image, the frame. So here's what it looks like with the Keystone Comp. The lines are still not totally parallel. So then when you tweak it in Photoshop, you can get perfectly parallel lines like that.
Right. And it's a big difference if you click between that and your first one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a huge difference.
All right, but one thing to remember is you have to shoot much wider than you really want, because you're going to lose a lot.
Yep.
You're losing all this stuff over here. I didn't move myself at all, but you're losing once you start tilting. And this was true also when I was shooting with the view camera, which you would shift the back to get your and tilt to get all this stuff correct.
Right.
Okay, so here's a closer up one, and oh, by the way, this is with the 40 to 150, which I think is the sharpest lens ever invented. I mean, you can practically see people, like, you know, doing their exercises up there in those windows.
Well, that's a massive difference between the original and the corrected.
Right, yeah. So here's what it looks like normally, and I'm very close to the building, guys. I can't get back far enough and get this much of the Empire State Building. There's no point of view. I think if I were up in like a rooftop bar, there's some rooftop bars in that neighborhood, and I think next week when I go back in, I'm going to try to shoot it looking at it straight on.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So that's the difference. I mean, it does do a few little weird things, like it stretches this out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't bring I mean, I have hundreds of these images I've done in the past couple of weeks, but this is really just for the purpose of showing you what it can do. So here's right by Grand Central. This is looking without any, without any keystone compensation.
Mm-hmm.
And there it is with the keystone compensation.
Yeah, lines are so much more parallel with the
Yeah.
Yep. See how here it sort of falls all, it's tilted, it's not parallel with the side. I mean, this isn't bad. I don't hate this like this, but this is, to me, looks more like the way I used to shoot with the view camera.
It's natural though. It feels better that way.
Yeah.
It does. But sometimes when you have a picture like this,
mm-hmm.
I could have done the keystone compensation, and I don't think I included it in here, but I could have done the keystone compensation. But sometimes I like the craziness of all the lines intersecting like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Plus, you would lose something, because I think that bridge, like on that one, that bridge lends a lot.
Right, but I could have shot a little bit wider, and then when I correct it, I would get the bridge in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, these are really illustrating things you can do. Here's another one from a distance.
Yeah, wow.
This is shot from a distance, and it's using keystone correction and Photoshop. This one is using nothing. And because I was far enough away, I was able to not get the problem.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Here, I'm sorry. This I made that up. I didn't mean to. This is not using keystone correction, and this is using it. It's the same shot.
Oh, okay.
And this one was not using anything. I was just really far away.
Now, the only way to do this on location, if you didn't have that built into your camera, would be with a tilt shift lens, right?
Yeah, but even that, yeah, the tilt shift lens on 35 millimeter is good. The view camera really can't be beat.
Okay.
Right, that's the real architecture camera.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's just so beautiful to be able to look at everything on the view camera and get it. But I'm not going back there again. You know, those days are over. I'm not going to be loading film holders in the dark, and I'm just not doing it. I pretend, I tell myself I might do it again, but I won't. I'm too spoiled now. I can get so much more instant gratification.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and then here's, if you could have a crush on a building, I have one on the Empire State Building and also the Flatiron Building. Here's my little homage to spring. These are just beginning. These are, pussy willow magnolias just opening right with the Flatiron Building in the background.
Oh, cool.
And those were just taken?
That was just yesterday.
Oh. Those will be ripped off by by Sunday and Monday.
Will they?
Well, with the snow coming.
Oh, yeah. Was there? Oh, right. There was snow in New York City. We had a blizzard up here. I'm like two hours north.
I know.
Another one coming.
I'm heading your way, Ann, on Tuesday. Well, not exactly that far up north, but I'll be in Greenwich.
Oh, yeah. But wait, let me ask you something, Mike. Is there a storm for Monday and Tuesday also?
Yeah, there's a big storm, nor'easter hitting. It looks like it could be anywhere from 8 to 14 inches, they said.
What?
Hitting Boston, New York, everything, yeah.
Oh, so they'll be gone, those poor little magnolias.
I think so.
Here's a fun one I did of the Empire State Building. Mm-hmm. I waited and waited and waited because I really wanted to get the flag. And then I had to go. So anyway.
I like that. Look at the light. The light, though, too, is really nice. And the little, where it comes in, like you have spots of light over on the right side.
I know. I love the way these buildings, there's nowhere in the world that has this kind of light hitting the buildings. Mm-hmm. It's just fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to end that.
All right.
Now, can you see me?
Sure can.
You're back.
Okay.
You're back.
So one of the things I'm going to do after this is over, you know, I always give the links to everybody so they can find you on Instagram and they can find your website and stuff like that. But a group of people did interviews on, I think it was might have been Pro Photo Daily last year.
Oh, I did some interviews on that.
And you did that. So I'm going to link to that too, because it's a great interview. And I think it'll give people a little bit further insight into who you are and some of the work that you've done. It's because you've got a lot more of a story to tell than what we do in a half hour here, you know.
Right.
It's
just flip through some of her pictures on our website and it can tell you a lot right there.
Yeah.
And you know, Mike and Jamie, also that interview, the guy who interviewed me, whose name is Jeff Wignall, he was one of the best reporters. He was so thorough. He got everything right. I mean, so many times you read an interview and it just doesn't bear any resemblance to anything you ever said. But he got everything right. He double checked everything. He did a lot. He was very, very thorough. Is he the person? Did he interview you?
Yeah. He definitely. It was a great interview. Very, very thorough.
And he didn't get any facts wrong, and he didn't spell things wrong. I mean, it was amazing. But he's been doing this for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, that makes all the difference. Somebody with some experience, not some kid.
Sure.
But well, we'll probably wrap up the show. It's been about 45 minutes. And as I promised you, it was a pretty painless experience, I'm assuming. The one thing that's going to really make all the difference, though, is if you tell us if you'll come back on again in the future or not.
Yeah, I will definitely come back on, and let's party on.
Yeah, exactly.
Party on.
I feel like we need one of those.
I feel like you guys this was too subdued. We were I got too serious. We should have had a little more fun. Next time we'll have some fun.
All right.
I guess maybe everybody will have to have a drink or something like before the show.
I'm gonna have a margarita.
Maybe we should do the show more like at 10 o'clock on a Friday night.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Well, you guys don't usually do Friday night shows, right?
No, we don't.
No. It was definitely a crazy week. I mean, scheduling was just nuts. But we made it happen. That's all that matters. So we're glad you could come on. Thanks for coming on, Anne, and thank you everybody for watching that was watching live. And just like we said throughout the show, just check out the show description. You can find links to not only Anne's personal website, but her Instagram account, which you need to be following, and also to her interview over on Pro Photo Daily, because like I said, it offers a little bit more background on her than what we touched on here. So
can I ask a quick question?
You sure can, of course.
Sort of a technical question. Do either of you guys ever do the time-lapse feature in the camera?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, the one I did yesterday, it took all the pictures, but it didn't, and I had checked to have it save as a movie in camera.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had 199 pictures every second. Took
one every second.
One every second. Yep. And I was, because it was on this crappy little tripod, I didn't want to, anyway, it never saved it as a movie.
Really? I can honestly say I've never had that happen yet.
No.
Maybe
but you could still throw it together and put it in one.
What do you use to put it together?
QuickTime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. If you just go to that folder and QuickTime, or actually just open up QuickTime and then go to File, Open Image Sequence, and choose that folder. Yep. And it'll automatically compile it, and you can choose your frame rate and everything right there too. So you might enjoy that a little more.
You get the same
and can you add music to it?
Pardon me?
Can you add music to it?
Sure can. It's going to shoot it out as like a separate movie file, and then you'll have to actually import it into something that allows you to edit video.
Okay.
Probably just throw it into iMovie.
Yeah, iMovie. You can do it on YouTube. YouTube allows you to throw.
So they just put it on YouTube. Yeah.
Yep, and you can add stuff to it there.
All right. Well, thanks. That was fun. I'm not wearing any of my Olympus hats though. You guys always wear the
I don't want people seeing my bald spot. That's why I wear that.
I wasn't gonna wear one today, but I don't know. I didn't do my hair. I was on a train. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, thanks so much. See you later, guys. Thank you. Bye.